Hi, my name's Mark Batten O'Donohoe, although some of you know me as Marky B, some of you know me as Batsy the Rock Pig. About 4 or 5 months ago, a friend of mine, Sean Sennett, and I were chatting online, and the subject of BUMS came up, Brisbane underground music scene. We realised it was 20 years since the first issue, and, well, sort of, how can you put it, it's got a special place in my heart, and I know I look at it through rose-coloured glasses, but I thought, well, pack up some handy cams, go down to Brizzy, ring up some old mates and see what they remember about BUMS and what sort of impact they think that it had. So I've thrown together this sort of home movie as more or less a record of those visits, those chats. How can you put it? I think it's a nice little summation of what Brisbane was like in 1990, what was happening, what was going down. I think for every band we mention, there's 1,000 bands we should be mentioning. I wish we had Sahara Herald in the doco. I wish we had Janie in the doco. I wish we had Rollo in the doco, Kelly Lloyd. I could keep going. But maybe that's next time. So look, for the next 2 hours, just deal with the bad audio, deal with the visuals. Just sit back and take in a little bit of my version of Brisbane underground music scene, or BUMS, as we put it, and have a good time. Anyway, enough of my yakking, now for the movie.
I think it affected it a lot. I came to Brisbane in '86. I noticed.
Still from the hangover of the beatings, the raids, and everything that we'd had from the early to mid '80s.
And then the National Party got a majority in 1986, and they brought just cleared everyone off the streets. And we were raided about 6 times, I think.
I remember getting told there's a hair colour, and the policeman went, "Poof the pink."
I remember walking down George Street near the Treasury with a friend Martin with really curly hair, and they actually stopped us and they actually searched Martin's hair because he had such tight ringlets. They thought he had stuff stashed in his hair.
I know, it started with Victoria Brazel and her takeover of the student union at Queensland Uni, and she was a big writer.
1988, it was December the 14th at 4:17 in the morning. That's when the union came down, shut down the studios and kicked out the announcers, locked the doors and had security guards there. And I still managed to do my shift from the transmitter tower in the transmitter hut with me holding a microphone and Dave talking.
The fact that David Lennon wasn't up to the transmitter, Mount Cootha, and started transmitting from there, and they played Meet the Old Boss, Sam Smith Boss, the first song they ever played on Triple Z.
We're under attack.
Yeah.
What kept Triple Z going, I think, was just the sheer tenacity, but just never say die headspace.
The closest thing to some music industry infrastructure was Rollo organising boat cruises. People doing it off their own back and publicising it with flyers that people would go to the record shop and actually pick up and take home and go to that gig. And we used to do poster runs and with tape and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Middle of the night.
Yeah.
Poster runs.
Flour and water.
I used to play in bands, and one of the things that was really hard was no matter how hard you tried, there was just no way you could get exposure for your band.
Oh, there was nothing. I mean, you relied on posters and flyers to get the message out.
Going to the coach bar before you go out, and then
everyone would I forgot about that place.
everyone would meet there and then discuss what was on that night and work out where to go.
Poster runs yourself, and we just used to do our own handbills. And
there's a lot of word of mouth back then, though.
So it was mainly posters and hand flyers that were handed out.
Had to do it yourself, so you just hire the hall and BYO, and I'm sure it was all very illegal, and the cops usually came by midnight, but you got to play, and you know, people got to see you, so it was your only avenue, you know.
To be blunt about it, if Time Off had been doing its job properly as a local street press, then BUMS wouldn't have got a look in or got a leg up.
I just sort of thought, wouldn't it be good if there was some sort of, just little paper, even just a, photocopied broadsheet or one sheet, just that regularly came out and talked about local stuff.
You knew we needed something. We needed something for Brisbane that was specifically us, because at that stage, Brisbane had a whole heap of bands that were brilliant, but were being ignored.
And so one night sitting by a pool, drinking heavily as you do with your friends in long, hot Queensland summer nights, we were flashing these ideas around, and
she said, wouldn't it be funny if we developed a magazine with a rude name?
So I had this thought that if you had a rude word, but you broke it up into little initials, you could get away with it. So it was like seed of my idea, mixed with bloody brilliant one of yours.
And BUMS, Brisbane underground music scene, I thought, shit, we're all broke, so BUMS, it just sort of seemed to make sense. And
we had nice bums back then. Don't know about now.
And we were just talking about it, and I suppose, well, if it's going to happen, originally I knew some people who loved their music, who could write, they were doing journalism, so this was a perfect way to try and start putting, what we were believing.
We had some wine, and you put it to us about doing a music magazine. You already had the name. And there was someone else there too. It was you, me, Susie, Amanda. It would have been.
I think I remember talking about it at uni in little conversations here and there about you had this idea, and
I rang up some mates, literally conned them into advertising. I mean, Malcolm Jacobson is the first man to get an ad or bought by an ad from BUMS. There we go, that little one right there, Malcolm, God bless you. I think I conned $50 out of him for it. Joe Panetta from Red Zeds, I think, was victim number 2. And on it went, I went down to the Music Works where I used to buy guitar strings, and the old mate Greg Dodge behind the counter, and I just hammered him and hammered him and hammered him.
Point in time, I think it was pretty timely that a magazine came along that was actually just for the masses of bands that were out there and doing their own thing. You know. So I think that's probably the main reason why I advertised, more supported rather than advertised. I think it was important for A, for an outlet, and B, to get behind it. So it continues.
Well, I don't know. When BUMS came out, it almost seemed like this halfway point between your time offs, which you're right. There was also the zine scene down below that, and the zines were just photocopied things you'd pick up in the record shop for 20 cents or $1. And BUMS sort of fit in between, so it was kind of great because it was like a zine with an actual news factor and a weekly or bi-weekly.
I thought it was fantastic, issue 1. I was really excited to see you come out with that. It was raw, it was rustic, but it was real, and I think just having photographs on the front, I think it was a great job.
I remember all these exciting...
on the page numbers are handwritten, how cute. That's right, yeah, because it was typewriters. It was all done with typewriters and cut and paste.
But I remember at the time, even though it looks a bit rudimentary now, at the time we were so proud of that first issue. We were just like, wow, that looks fantastic. You've done the best job. And it was with what, with what we had.
Which is why something that these days that might look quite arcane as BUMS was really important. It was actually quite cutting edge, And from issue 1, it looked schmick,
Well, hey,
issue 1's always special, because it's diving in the deep end, isn't it? And seeing like, oh, here we go.
I was just glad that it came out because it was a street level thing on our level, and it was just a good thing about, we were all just starting off, and and you guys doing BUMS were all just starting off, so it was a very close-knit thing. It was for us, about us.
Johnny.
But essentially the first band was the Griffith Uni-based Sanity Assassins, where I was the drummer in that band. A very bad drummer, but I survived a couple of years.
The very first time I met Dirt, I was doing a 4-track for Mona Lisa Overdrive. He just rocks in, just totally wasted. It's like at 6 o'clock on a Monday night, and he's just totally off his head, and he's telling this story how he said, oh yeah man, I don't know what happened last night, but I woke up in bed and there was a big slab of veal German sausage in the bed with me, and I don't know if I ate it or half of it or what, but crazy stuff.
I don't think anything was planned. I don't think there was a real promoter that really knew what they were doing. It was, the triplets came about just as During the Rebels were playing a few covers, and I really liked the Tom Petty stuff and whatnot. And James brought this band along called Who's Skidoo that we didn't really know much about at all. And he played these songs, and we kept rotating these covers. And before long, we had a set's worth of Who's Skidoo songs that we formed the Minnesota Triplets on.
Minnesota Triplets were, it's great. I remember seeing them rocking the house several times. He was very entertaining. Total Loose Cannon too, which is always good in a rock and roll. When I met him the first time, he came up and we shook hands, and then he licked me on the face. Wow, interesting approach.
And it just took off. Like we had to learn another 6 songs to make a full set, and we didn't expect it was a younger crowd. It was a different crowd, but there was 500 of them every time we played. Our third gig, we headlined the Triple Z Market Day at Toowong, which I think was the first one back in those days.
Dirt Petty.
The best.
Because we used to call him that. Memories of Dirt. Yeah, most of them not really mentionable. Always looking the part, saying he's just rock and roll heaven, wasn't he? Really. Probably born with leather skin tights on.
I bore people to tears with telling them about Dirt, people that have never met him, because he's just like a legend. One of my biggest memories of the Triplets was, like I said before, we had a gig, someone didn't show up, those guys all rocked up in their car just to say hi, They'd just been at band practice, they had all their gear, said please help us, and Dirt got up on stage and played in his Broncos shirt and shorts.
Always love watching Dirt. He's just magnetic. He's just so special, and even though we have different tastes in lots of different musics, who cares? Dirt's playing. Of course I go and see Dirt, you know, he's hilarious, he's great.
I mostly remember seeing Dirt off stage. I remember him regaling the public, you know, stories about gigs that he'd done and stuff like that. He was always really good at telling stories at the bar.
Don't you know the time will tell? I've had enough of this bullshit of my blues game. It's tearing me apart and I got no one to blame. Sometimes it is sabotage, sometimes it is sideline. Sometimes the truth doesn't work and sometimes.
You pick up BUMS, you're given a context, you're given a description, you're given photographs, would make you think, yes, I want to go there, no, I don't want to go there, or hey, it looks interesting, check it out anyway.
You know, you found that the small bands that were playing in tiny bars and tiny clubs, and you gave them a voice that no one else was giving them.
When BUMS came along, that was much more targeted at the grassroots and obviously the kind of the local scene. I think that had a big impact, you know. Sort of.
Within an issue or two, we had people like Susie Mile helping us out with artwork. The first initial team was myself, Adine, probably the most prolific writer back then, Amanda, Teresa, Sarah, Janie, Susie Mile. That was really the first, what I would call the first team.
Yeah, it was pretty frantic. It was a good buzz though. All of us sitting in there, some were typing their stories as they were going, as I was setting the layout up. It was stressful at times because we've never worked on something like that.
Where did we start? I think we started quite a few times actually.
We started at Toowong High.
Yeah, just round the corner from here. All three of us went there. We played at the local sort of Triple Z joints such as
Aussie Nash.
The Aussie Nash, the Australian National Hotel.
Which when we went to do a very funny story is when we went to do our prep work. So we went to check out the joint and we heard it was a bit of a punker place. We went the week before and we all got dressed up in punker gear, which John converted his purple symbol bag into a vest and wrote "I'm a punk" on the back. So we turned up and there were no punks, just skinheads and bikers in the middle of a war, and then we ended up being chased from there and
having a brick thrown through the back windscreen of the car that we were making a hasty getaway in.
Yeah, well, we definitely played on a boat cruise, the Toxics. It was their launch, I think.
Yeah.
Toxic Garden. And I remember that their manager was a cranky piece of work, and she wouldn't let us in the backstage area. And, you know, it was like then Toxics arrived, like they were megastars, and you know they were sort of friends.
They pretty much sent us to the barbecue.
Yeah, but they weren't aware that we'd been, you know, told we weren't allowed back there. It's pretty weird. We had fun gigs, I remember. It was fun. Can't remember the other band that played. Do you know?
It was the Tellers.
Tellers, that's
yeah.
right.
It was an extremely exciting period. I think we all sort of felt that. It just wasn't a lot of exposure.
Yeah. When we first got to Melbourne, if you said you were from Queensland, they went, okay, you're in the Hutchinson cover band, whatever pile. 2 years later, if you were from Queensland, we were like the coolest thing since sliced bread and Parmesan and whatever else.
Fuck you. Yeah. Fuck you.
But
Dreadlock, Michael.
yeah, I mean, Michael is just an amazing entertainer, and he had his dreads flying around before anyone else did. Really, it was pretty exciting to see him. He was possessed by Hendrix, you know, he was playing, and he's definitely an amazing player.
Pretty up there.
And I mean, no slight to Dave and John either. I mean, they're all good at what they do.
They might I've had too much bourbon that night. I've been listening to some of our recent live things, and it seems like most of the time I'm just going and nothing much is happening. And then occasionally
Just
there'll
the
be
way you... Oh, it's back to entertainment. The way you looked when you were doing that.
The Toxics used to do the Sunday night residency at the Orient.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, great musos, really energetic band, great to watch all the hair and everything. And people just, really had a good time when they were playing.
Okay, so 2 points I reckon. First of all, we were originals up until the time of John's 21st, when we said, let's do a funny, fun type gig where we just play a bunch of songs that we really dig at the moment.
Some of them original, some of them covers.
Some of them were covers, and then from that moment on, we just kept getting calls. People saying, do you want to come and play here? And we went, oh yeah, sure. So basically we didn't really change that format again because people liked it so much and we were happy with it.
Those dreads is the first thing I always think of. They're going crazy. Always. I remember seeing them, first time I saw them was up at St Paul's Tavern. And just the musicianship, I think.
They could actually play. It was like cheese, you're playing music, but
Thank you.
My very first band, which was, I left school, 85, was called Denoyan, and they were Glenn Bell, you might know him, the bass player, who did Sons of Bee Gees and things like that, and the Wickerman later on, a bunch of them, and they were lovely people. Michael Evans, Roger the drummer, I can't remember his surname. Anyway, and Brett Parker, who Bretsky later did rock and roll circus music and whatever, he's great. Brisbane at the time being pretty much a cock rock sort of scene. The rock scene was all very blokey. It was fun, it was good, they were all my friends, but
you had to have your hair.
And we were the doo-wops, and it was just like...
And Ann Della Peterson, she was it. If you wanted, unfortunately for Annie, she probably hated it in the old days, but if you were going to do a single or a cassette, and you wanted some harmonies, and you wanted the best, you grabbed Annie. And she did it, she was so generous with the time and with all the people that she did so much that she was on. I guarantee you, every BUMS top 5 single release, you got 33% had Ann Della Peterson on it.
I just saw her as such a dominant singer and such a brilliant artist. And I really don't think that she's been given her due as much as she deserved.
What was really good about BUMS with this too, because I can see reading all this, like I was doing, and there was Bat Swing and doing all of the rock stuff, but I was just starting to try other things, and so it was a great opportunity to, among your community that knew you and supported you, to be doing something different, and not being not being sort of totally out of water. You were still within this kind of network of people that would like to come and hear you play or sing or whatever, but even though you were doing something a little bit different, and that was what was pretty cool, I think, about BUMS for me at that particular point in my life, where I was just trying to do some different things rather than what I've been doing. Other people would see it too, and if they were looking for, like, I used to get a lot of backing stuff for other people through reading about me and BUMS, and I didn't really know them. I knew they played around and whatever, and it wasn't necessarily my thing, the music, but again, a Brisbane band having a go and recording, I know how hard and expensive that is at the time, so go and help them out and whatever, and so I made a lot of friends through that. There weren't a lot of female singers at the time. They were there, but not necessarily on the stage, and so I guess I had the good fortune of getting to do what with a heap.
Annie, she's just, her vivacious laugh fills the room wherever, you can hear her from miles away laughing. She just always seems to be laughing.
Charismatic woman.
She sang on our first EP, and She was the best singer I'd ever heard.
Yeah, she was a real singer. We were pretty
She was
impressed.
a real singer. That she would work with us, we were all like very happy. And then we've since had a tour with us, you know, years after her. And she's just great value, lovely girl.
Yes, the queen of Brisbane music, you know. Yeah, such a great singer and musician herself, but you know, great organiser and just a great people person. You know, we're all after gig parties at her place, playing the piano until it's got blood on it on the keys, and you know, and she'd dig in and get, you know, drink with us and be happy for us to bleed on the piano and play Jerry Lee Lewis on it or whatever, you know, like, and yeah, and then went on to do, you know, well, you know, so much organising for the Woodford Festival and all that.
She formulated that women in voice. That's still going today, man. I mean, she created that. And nowadays, I think I agree with what Michael was saying, that she never really wanted to be the front person. But Andella was at the forefront. Terrific.
Started doing flyers, poster stuff for a lot of the local bands. Just found myself part of a community that was my art friends and my art friends who are also musicians. So round about the same time I'd met Cliff and Daniel, and they were doing all our flyers for free. They said, you know, a little bit of ink, let us in free to the gigs and we'll print them for you. And Donnie was doing the Sunday night residency. Johnny Griffin was running it, and he had been offered a bigger venue, so he'd been offered stuff at the Treasury and he'd be doing obviously all these DJ nights and some other things as well. And I'd done the door a few nights for some of Donnie's gigs. They just came to the two of us and said, we've put a bit of effort into this venue, we can't do everything, we don't want to see this go, so do you guys want it? And we, without even thinking, we just went, yep, we'll take it. So we sort of had 4 weeks of just helping them out, but we had to book our first bands pretty much the day after they gave us the venue.
Yeah. But we were lucky enough at the Orient, when we started playing there, Donnie Blondog he was working there with Andrea or whatever, and you know, if someone pulled out, he'd ring us up and he'd say, "Mate, do you want a gig tonight?" And we'd go, "Sure." So we were we never turned it down for a gig, so we were always the band he would ring up.
Andrea, the door bitch from hell.
No.
She's lovely and was never a door bitch. She was, and yeah, they could keep their heads together while no one else could. And so, oh well, Andrea could, you know. But somehow Donnie did a lot of the time. He sort of knew what was happening.
But especially with that many bands, you know, I can't remember. You can't believe we used to get through that many bands on a Saturday when Donnie was a legend.
So yeah, so I mean, Donnie's I reckon a really important figure at that period. And it's still, and I mean, I haven't seen Donnie play for a long time, but apparently he is a powerful guitarist now. Like, apparently he's really storming up at West End. But he and Andrea, you know, we haven't even talked about the Orient. The Orient was such an important place for us and for our era, I guess, in Brisbane. And yeah, you know, Donnie is a cool dude who liked us and supported us.
Yeah, no, and the Orient as well, like especially like as it gets dark, the back door, the fact that the drummer was playing with the back door open and the street outside, and you can see people walking past and looking in. And I don't think that would happen in a venue these days, that the drummer could be in fear of and sometimes actually falling out the back door.
I remember Donnie at the Orient.
That corner.
You know, when Donnie was booking the band.
Yes, Donnie.
And when you'd be in the middle of a gig, Donnie would be back just a few feet from the stage with a ciggy going.
Yeah, there are always those people that were sitting off to the side, just enjoying what they were seeing.
And Donnie was in in the blues scene, completely different thing really. To a lot of the sort of pop rock stuff was going on. And he was just right into it. Andrea Smith, wonderful, almost the literal centre of the Brisbane scene for those years. Wonderful person, generous, tremendous, magnet.
Literal as in the Orient was right between
Yeah.
the city Beautiful. All night you'd be dropping into the Orient if you couldn't stay. I loved that.
There's, you know, for some,
I'm back, I'm going,
for,
I'm going.
And that was great, so I used to get a lot of sound gigs, doing sound at the Orient there through them. And I'd go, "Oh, Donnie's on the phone, he's got a gig for you," you know, so hop in the car and bolt in and do the sound, yeah. So.
I remember standing in Rocking Horse one day in Rocking Horse Records. I was really proud because I was standing there looking at some, music, and a guy came in and went, "Have you got any bums left?" And they just sort of went, "No, all gone, mate." And I was just like, ooh.
We were so broke, how can you put it, even from the very start of the magazine this happened. Like, there was never, in my time at BUMS, there was never an issue that was machine folded. But one of the ways we used to save money on our print bill was, instead of paying for the printer to fold and collect the magazine, we would get the magazine.
And just everyone folding and getting into a rhythm and laughing, and it was always, 99% of the time it was always a good laugh.
Yeah.
And we had a great rhythm. We all had I can see them now, the big A4 sheets like this, in front of us.
Oh, it was the worst. It was the nightmare job.
Collating, folding.
Oh, God.
Okay, guys, we need you here at 3 o'clock. It's going to take about 4 hours.
I can't believe how everyone just kept turning up and helping.
And even friends. It wasn't even just those of us
No,
who were
we
writing,
wrote
but we
everywhere.
wrote whoever we could in to come along.
Yeah.
But, we'd sit around, have a banter,
Yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah.
But it was also a nightmare.
Yeah.
I really distinctly remember running into music stores and dumping the issues of BUMS, and I always thought it was you that was driving them, was doing that. Yes, and sometimes you'd have to actually go around the block because you'd get a ticket.
I do remember some of that, yeah.
And then we did the inner city.
I think it was like 30 issues here, 20 issues here. We'd have to work out how many each one got and everything.
Yeah.
Through the 80s, I was in Sydney, early 80s. I'd been playing in a band with Greg and Darren Atkinson called 42nd Street, and we'd been playing, doing the usual. And the view back then, anyone in Sydney, was that, when they're serious, they'll come down. I know Sydney like the back of my hand, but I didn't want to go back and live there a third time because I liked living up here. So we made up our mind right from the word go that we're not going to move, we're just going to make it happen somehow from here. Whether that meant just being in the van all year round or whatever it took to make that happen, that's what we do. A certain isolation is good for creativity. I think that's why a lot of great bands came out of Brisbane, because there was a sense of isolation. Same happens in Perth. The sense of, we're here on our own, we've just got to make it up as we go. It makes a lot of sense. I was in a relationship with Kerry, and we've been together for a long time, probably about 7 years, I think, at that stage. And I had no idea that she could sing. And I've been doing some work down in Sydney, and I was on my way back, and I wrote this song in my head on the way back, just on a dictaphone. And I got home, and I 4-tracked it, and I said to Kerry, do you think you could have a listen to this song and learn it and maybe just give it a crack singing so I can hear what it sounds like with a female voice? And she said, all right, I'll give it a shot. So a couple of days later we sat down at 4-track, I set her up with a mic, and as we're putting it down, I'm thinking, wow, this isn't too bad. And by the time we finished the first tape, I was starting to think, wow, I think she can really sing. And like when we first started, a lot of people assumed we were a Sydney band because we didn't regularly gig in Brisbane. We worked from the premise of make the song first, get the songs there. And that's why we'd never played a show before we'd even got a record deal, because first and foremost was the idea of we can't work without songs, and we want songs that can be played on the radio, and it just made better sense to do it that way.
It's back to the workers to set back the
By issue 2, we'd already started to organise our first benefit, which was the Aloha Pussycats, the Bam Bams, you know, earwigs. Treasury Hotel, 18th of May, Saturday night, sponsored by Ian Mitrid and Johnny Griffin, the guys from Club Phoenix. They were incredibly supportive. They were club owners at the time. They lent us their nightclub for the night. Didn't charge us a cent. That was the sort of support that BUMS had within one issue. We were broke, we needed money. And something like a benefit gig straight up. And I mean, within 2 issues, I think we had it by issue 3. You know, we'd made enough money to know that we could publish for at least another 3 or 4 issues. Where did the idea for the BUMS benefits come? We were just trying to find a way to find a few extra dollars to, you know, keep this thing published. Once we realised that, you know, issue 1 was a fluke, issue 2 we realised that we have to keep doing this, and so how do you do it? You've got to find money. I suppose early on I found about the harsh realities of publishing, which are the fiscal realities. If you've got 3 or 4 bands that are prepared to play for free, for a bit of exposure, and you know, which these guys were, again, I knew that I didn't have to pay my band, so we were straight on the bill.
It was kind of like just a big party. All these people coming together that knew each other really.
But I mean, you know, having BUMS around was always, you know, at the time, like I said, it was a source of pride for us to see our names in there, or have the chance to do those gigs, the benefits gigs. You know, most of the time we never got paid for the gigs anyway, so doing a benefit gig was a way of getting the exposure ourselves.
Oh, those benefit gigs are better because you get a bite crowd. You officially don't get paid.
Where people were attending the BUMS bar and the benefits because they knew it put back into something that they enjoyed, and that's where the money was going. And to me, but for me, that benefit was about the atmosphere, I guess, and it was just like a big party. I can remember how panicked people were because we had no idea where he was. Time was ticking away, and there was the drum kit there, but no one had sticks. So we went out the back and found 2 screwdrivers, and Mark played the drums with the screwdrivers. That when Coochie found out, he was absolutely ropeable.
So I was late for the first gig of the night. I still had to turn up to the second one. It's ruined my life really, because I've prided myself on only having once been late for a gig. Now it's twice.
I did the metal show for 10 years, and the girl that I did that with, Rachel, who's an old Indooroopilly High girl, her sister Jude is like one of the biggest Kiss fans in the world. Like, her and her husband got married at the Hilton Hotel, and the best man was Paul Stanley, and Gene Simmons gave the bride away. And they were the first couple in the world to get married with Kiss at the wedding.
I think, you know, by issues 3, 4 and 5, we're starting to see, how can you put it, a really good cross-section of what was happening in Brisbane. You know, we're starting, you know, Jamie with the metal pages is starting to cover bands like the Lost Boys, AIM, Thrust, bands who are the big players in that arena.
Well, I'm actually looking at this and sort of going, yeah, that's right, there's a fair bit of metal in BUMS. You know, like, well, it's like, okay, yeah, Brisbane metal. Second page. But I recorded Iron Lightning at one stage. But yeah, like there was all the Sherwood metal gigs.
Again, it's a situation that nobody else was writing about these bands.
Yep.
You know, like Iron Lightning were a great metal band, put on a great show.
Yep.
Nobody was writing about them. I can't remember the others that I did, but they generally didn't do anything for these bands, and these bands were good bands. Yeah. You know, like that's the reason why I wrote, because nobody's going to do an article on a metal band. You know, like metal. What's metal?
You know, metal. There was all the gigs out at Sherwood and stuff. The metal stuff was less in the city, and so once again they started their own thing and did it at Sherwood and stuff like that. You know, a lot of the metal bands recorded with Simon, and I would be assisting him. You know, there was Spitfire, Guardian, Iron Lightning, of course, and
That's where the good drummers were.
that's where a lot of the good musicianship was, in the metal stuff. You
Yeah.
know, for me, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, metal is a subculture that has always been there and will always be there.
Yeah.
And no matter what trends come and go, metal is always there, you know, always, you know, which is great.
No.
Out of all of those bands,
creativity.
Out of all of those bands, Leather Zen played 100% originals.
Okay, let's talk about the independent scene now.
Well, look, it was born out of my frustration with Dirt. And look, he's a brother to this day, and he's a great mate. And so I went, I want to go and do some things, so I'll gather in some people and we'll do it. And I actually took the drummer with me, which didn't endear me at all. And we had Richard Triggs and a girl called Mandy singing for us. And we started playing what we wanted to be, some sort of commercial poppy thing.
Yep.
And commercial pop rock. And so we did that and wrote some songs and recorded out at Sweet 16, I think, from memory. With what was his name? It was Tony Byrne. Thank you very much, Tony Byrne. Lovely bloke, lovely bloke. So he recorded us out there, which was good. Yeah, we got all that together and we started rehearsing, and we rehearsed for a good 12 months before we played a show. We wanted to be spectacularly strong when we played, and we wrote obviously for that whole time. So our first gig was really, really strong, and we were just really tight, and we had great backing vocals. We spent a lot of work on that. We instantly got a bit of notoriety, and we got a bit of coverage in the press, which was nice. And from there we got into the Rock Awards. The Rock Awards back then, there were a lot of bands entered, and certainly we'd been through it with Dirt and the Rebels, and we'd made the semis without quite making it to the final. Well, this time round with Leather Zen, we just strolled straight through the finals. The final was at Transformers, and it was a full house at Transformers, so it would have been 2,000 odd people, I guess. Sure enough, we won. The time period between the last band playing and the announcement was about an hour, so it must have been awfully close, because there was a really, really painfully long deliberation. And so we won there, and that was very exciting. And my mum saw us, she thinks,
Make it happen. Only just begun. Let it out. Oh God, it feels so good. You gotta turn and face the rising of the. Oh yeah.
These sort of staples of the Brisbane scene in the 90s
benefited immensely from this groundwork that was being done by people who hadn't left Brisbane.
Yeah, I think it's sometime around then there was an earlier version of the band called the Grimstones, which sort of came out in sort of 85 maybe or something, after we'd all just kind of left school. And I was at Griffith Uni, and I think I recall like a first gig out at the Casbah at Griffith Uni around that time sort of thing. So playing a lot of gun club covers and the Cramps and things like that. And that was probably the start of it. Yeah, probably with Pussycats right around 87, something like that. It's, you know, really going back to those days and being based in Brisbane, there was no kind of career aspirations to it. It was kind of like-minded people having fun, getting in the practice room, having a go kind of thing, you know. I mean, we would never subscribe to like, you know, kind of the punk rock ethos, but it kind of did have that sort of, well, musically we didn't, but, you know, we didn't attempt to. But it really did have that sort of sensibility about it, I guess, of just kind of having fun and having a go and doing it, you know, so.
I liked the Yellow Pussycats because they did the couple of Neil Diamond songs that I thought were a bit cool.
The Pussycats gigs were just a party because they were just lovely people. They were really lovely people. They had a great sound and they had that whole jangly thing going, and you'd catch up. It was just that was a community thing for me. You'd catch up with all your mates at Pussycats. I did too! Why did that bit? That's right. Yeah. And then some of their originals I used to get up and do with them,
Yeah, definitely. I definitely remember all that sort of, you know, kind of, you know, like you say, this issue, you know, I am not ashamed to say, I think I've probably still got one of these floating around my bedroom or something like that, or in a box somewhere, you know, probably a few cockroaches have been feasting on it, but it is there somewhere. But yeah, definitely, I think that was always a real buzz, because like we were saying, you're pretty starved of any sort of attention or, you know, and again, not that was the be all and end all, but, you know, when you guys came along with BUMS, it was pretty exciting to sort of, you know, see you pick and blurred and kind of feel like a real band for a week or whatever.
So, Johnny Mullins, Aloha Pussycats. Oh, tough that day. I'll never forget. After I saw Aerosmith one night, Aloha Pussycats were playing at St Paul's Tavern, and Johnny Mullins was just totally channeling Steve Tyler. It was awesome.
There it is. That was probably around when we were just had a couple of singles out or something like that. So, and we were playing pretty frequently back in those days as well. So, there you go, Orient Hotel, the 15th of June.
One of the best versions I've ever heard of Gimme Shelter, and I've seen the Rolling Stones live, but the best version I've ever heard was, I think it was at the Zoo, John Mullen and Annie Della singing it together, and it was just fantastic.
I think a lot of the bands were jealous of, because, you know, I mean, the main thing about the Aloha Pussycats was the chicks. The amount of chicks that they pulled to the gigs. They pulled lots of guys as well to the gigs. It's all about the girls. That's what rock and roll's about, girls.
Also, there used to be a pub in Brisbane called White Chairs, and every Friday night one of my favourite things at White Chairs was, for a while there, Rusty and Sherry Sue Cactus from Cactus Fever would get together with a little vocal PA, sit in the corner and just play punk and western music. They were fantastic. And so that was the whole concept of the BUMS part. It was just a small gig, vocal PA, band playing away, bar prices early in the night between, you know, get there at 6, pay $2, leave at 9, and then, you know, go on to all the real gigs.
I remember playing the downstairs one where you had to play on the little elevated bit in front of the girls' toilets, and I remember playing the upstairs BUMS bar as well. But it was great because BUMS bar was an early evening show before you went out somewhere else.
Oh, I remember getting there. I don't remember leaving very often.
That was fun.
That was a hoot. Go there first, get drunk, and then roll on to the next gig.
I must say I loved being a door girl. You know,
I was so glad you did that. I hated that. Hated it.
But I was trying to think how it worked, and I think from memory,
It's $2.
it was $2 to get in.
Yep.
And the band got it all.
Yep.
And that was it.
Yeah,
That was
and
how it
we
worked.
advertised the PA guy on the back of the magazine, and he'd give us the PA for free. Well, I'd just have to lug it up those
that's
stairs
right.
and set it up, because while he'd give it to us for the ad, he wouldn't come with it and set it up.
But I do remember there were some occasions when, you know, it was only a fairly small room upstairs at the Orient.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it moved, but that was in the early days.
No,
And
that's very cool.
I don't know, some nights we'd think really successful, it was packed out. There might have been, say, I don't know, 40, 50 people there or something. But there were nights when there might be some really new band and that, you know, you'd be sitting on the door going, there's only like 6 people in there. We're going to be giving them $12 at the end of the night. Like, I'm going to have to put in some money because this is too embarrassing.
But you know what? They were always really good, and they just basically looked on it as a practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An experience.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about legends of Brisbane.
Yes.
Okay, the 5 Hanks guys. I mean, top shelf. How fortunate was it, the Rebels?
It was actually intimidating for me, because they were so smooth and so cool and so good as musicians, and I was in my first band as a bass player.
Singing for the Hanks.
Yeah, that's right.
And drumming for Loves the Blur. And the Hanks were like Tony and I. Yeah, that was it from Loves the Blur. You know, it was a hobby band. We just wanted to have a fun covers band. You know, like just to play our favourite songs.
Yeah.
We wanted to do songs about trains. So I think Max and I dreamed that up, and we got Tony. And so like Loves the Blur was our serious band.
Yeah.
And then we had the Hanks. With the Hanks, we wanted to do covers, but they wouldn't sound much like the original. And I used to take pride in bringing forward sort of unusual songs, or just forgotten songs, or have you considered this one, or you know, like. And so it was not really playing covers. We weren't keeping up with the top 40 of the time or anything like that. It was sort of being like archivists in a strange way, or following a tradition in another way, sort of thing. So
I think we're here for this week.
Remember at the Rebel show where the Hanks, the headline, they handed out a list with 98 songs for the audience to pick the songs, yeah. And they had a big, like your bingo wheel or whatever, the raffle wheel, and the ball would go around, and that was it. That was the song they played.
Yep.
I mean, and that was 88. I mean, they knew 100 songs in 1988, so Christ knows how many. And they're still going strong.
Do you know 100 songs?
You know, it's been said before, and I get the chance to say it now, you know, that there's probably never been a better live act in Brisbane over the last 20 years. It's as simple as that.
Seeing the Howlin' and the Moon Doggies, what fun was that? Sunday afternoons we'd go and see the Worms at the Newmarket Hotel, and then we'd go in straight into the night time to see the Doggies.
Yeah, look, institution. That's right.
And they're still playing.
Institutionalised.
Still playing now.
Yeah, Coogin playing for Mojo Webb. Saw him at the Joint a couple of weeks ago.
Yep. And Donny Doggy playing out with a bunch of
Young guys down at the Boundary.
And both those guys at the time, I remember kind of being like the grandfathers of Brisbane rock. They're still doing it.
Yeah.
Great grandfathers.
But with old bands, I think I liked the Hanks, and I used to go to the Hanks all the time. Loved Loves the Blur, which everybody did. Wendy I first met when she was running a club, and she used to dress like Marilyn Monroe. I used to go to that club sometimes and met this really odd girl, and then found out that she was in a band with a couple of the guys from the Five Hanks, so went to see the band. Loves the Blur, I think, were
probably the best Brisbane band for a lot of years because their stuff still stands up today. I still play stuff I've got to people and they don't know it's an old band and they still really love it. And just the style of music that they were playing I think was really innovative and different, and it's a pity that at that era in Brisbane people had no chance to get anywhere, because I think they would have if there had have been those opportunities put in front of them like they're put in front of bands now.
The first band I was ever in was with a few guys from Indooroopilly High called the Huntsman, and I got replaced one time. I remember my parents made me go on a Christmas holiday down to Tassie, and while I was away they kept rehearsing with someone else. I was shattered, absolutely shattered.
One of the things that I suppose was good in hindsight about issue 9 was that on page 4 of issue 9 you've got Sarah Herold, who later on becomes more or less Mrs. Big Day Out, interviewing this barely known little band that's playing the North New South Wales, Brisbane coast in a Brisbane vibe, Powderfinger,
Yeah, because it started as a 3-piece, and in sort of December of '88, and that was JC and myself and a guy called Bish playing drums straight after school, and we were doing Sunny Boys covers and
Was it Neil Young at that stage? Or
yeah, we did something good. I mean, we still called Powderfinger, so we did, yeah.
I had a band called Sonic Tapestry. So we supported Badfinger a couple of times. Once at Main.
Yeah, once, and then we went and saw you guys up in the house at the West Leagues Club or something, and Bert and I were there having a couple of shandies, and playing on the table, and we went, I think he's the guy.
Your wireless guitars, the guitar systems had just come out, so I was all over it, of course.
Yeah.
So I was off the stage, running around like a fool on the table.
I think that gig was with a band called Aries as well. Yeah, we used to play at the Top Pub before they did it up down there.
We would drive and play almost anywhere. We had our iconic band, that was our home, and people's lounge rooms. Yeah, several people's lounge room floors. We would play where kind of anyone would have.
Yeah. In fact, one time we, Darren and I stayed. After the gig, everyone sort of drove back to Brisbane or something. And we're like, no, we want to stay. So we had to hitch. We had to make it from Toowoomba to Lismore. And so we had to do the gig in Lismore the next night. We made it with 3 different rides in the back of utes and stuff. We made it to just in from the Gold. And we ended up having to call, and this must have been pre-mobile phones.
Yeah.
So we had to call someone before they left and said, we're waiting on the news speaker right of course, because we don't know if they're going to make it on time.
We stayed at the party too.
And Alison St. and I did some duets with them, and it was great fun. Had a ball, and they're great. They are great. It was like, why are you getting us when you can get anyone else? But they were after a sound, and they'd been listening to CDs and records, and they wanted a particular sound, and they put together the sound they wanted. And I thought, shit, that's really, really good. And also, with them, we'd be down in the dressing rooms backstage at, say, Big Day Out. So there's, band folks and famous people everywhere, and they were just very, very go Queensland, to the point of being hilarious. They'd wear a lot of I'm I've got a picture of JC with a polystyrene hat that had Go Queensland or something on it, and they'd, and everyone would have a few drinks, and people would knock on the doors, and you can't come in unless you're a Queenslander, and it was just like this reverse snobbery, because for years Queenslanders and everyone who from Queensland who went south pretended like they weren't Queenslanders, and we're like, we know!
Yeah, but I remember that, this one recording session, and we left Red Z 9 o'clock in the morning or something. We've been there all night, and the last 4 hours was Ian just doing this one solo to this song Let It Grow, just doing it over and over again. and you know, be like,
about them as they were more about the art and the craft. If they wanted a sound and they knew that that person could help them deliver that sound, that's what they wanted. They didn't care what you wore, who you looked like, what scene you're in. It was kind of more about the craft and the art itself, and you've got to respect that.
Very much.
they'd be like, no, I can still do it better, you know. And yeah, so we were about like 4 hours on that one guitar solo. And then it turned out that they didn't even release that song, you know.
Oh,
and I'm
no.
still on their back about it to this day, you know.
In that sense, I think BUMS really gave Street Press a kick up the bum. It certainly made us...
By issue 10, you know, how can you put it, we'd hit double figures, which was a huge thing. We had a barbecue to celebrate and everything. It was a big milestone. We never thought we'd make, 2 issues, let alone 10 issues. So issue 10 was huge, but by issue 10, we have regular advertisers. Most of the local venues, local promoters are now starting to advertise in BUMS. We even have interstate ads for interstate bands. We had an ad for the Faith No More concert. So by issue 10 we're still not making, like how can you put it, we're barely covering our print bill, but it's at least getting a little bit more stable in terms of advertising.
Level. And I think that's something like that BUMS sort of filled that void for a lot of those bands and sort of, just kind of, I don't know, a bit of validation as well, kind of reviews and things, and really that was its primary aim rather than advertisers or other pressures that go into running a magazine.
I think that helped. I think if we had any idea of what we're trying to do, we would never have done it.
There were different times in one sense because there just wasn't work around. People just live in a different fashion, I think.
Yeah, it was poor Kitty's recession we had to have, and I think we were all on his rock and roll scholarship too. I mean, the dole was pretty easy to get. There wasn't a lot of, statutory authorities looking over your shoulder sort of stuff going on. So it was pick up your pay and do what you can with it. And I think back on it too, we're all shopping at Vinnie's. We're all second-hand clothes. We're not going to nightclubs so much as going to share houses and having massive parties. And things were cheap. I think we just really enjoyed having this fantastic party lifestyle on a shoestring.
Yeah, so we were playing pre-BUMS because I remember we did a live tour at Triple Z when it was at the Toowong.
At the Simbaloo show.
Toowong Village just there.
Yeah,
so I remember as Purple Avengers we did a live tour, and that must have been '89.
Yeah, that was a cracker. That was a great night.
Which is good fun, but so we were around probably when BUMS kicked off.
QUT.
I seem to remember we did one of the QUT shows. Yeah, one of the Band Collective ones.
You have a better memory than I have. I can remember lunchtimes at QUT. Yeah. Remember much else?
Yeah, there was.
And maybe the odd support. Yeah, no, I can't remember. The odd. I recently watched a really early Pink Floyd doco, and I was surprised how much we were channeling them, even though we didn't really know what we were doing. And it links back to that question you asked us before, what were you doing pre-BUMS? And the truth is, we were in the practice room for maybe 3 or 4 years. We just hard at it up there in the TC Burn building, and the truth is, on a big Sunday night, it'd be a big chufa, a big Chinese feast, and then we'd jam for 4, 5, 6 hours, and from that, with all those rambling instrumental psychedelic numbers appeared, got into that weird place, and I'd like to think we might be able to rediscover a little portion of it, where we'd all be a little bit psychic. We'd played so much together that we'd know all the weird directions that people would drag each other in, and we'd just go with it. And the band generally just jammed. I mean, we had song structures, but in a lot of ways it was really jamming too. So it was sort of loose, it's almost jazz, but we probably weren't that good musicians. And sometimes you maybe get that happy thing, like I used to get it occasionally. I'd start hearing other instruments that weren't in the room. I occasionally hear a sax or something going, but there's not one here, but it feels like I can hear one, and it's just that overtone series, and probably because we were so bloody loud at the times, ringing off walls, doing weird stuff.
Swimming back and forth and more circles lay there. In a goldfish bowl for everyone to see. Yeah, I'm looking out, there's someone looking back at me.
Issue 11, I think after issue 10, and by that stage I was sort of starting to maybe get a little bit complacent. I always referred to issue 11 as a 16-page mistake, which it was. We tried to go from 12 to 16 pages. We didn't have enough content, we didn't have enough ads to justify it. I think it's a very sparse and white-friendly or page-friendly issue. We really had to push it to put the content on there. We were very much geared to the 12-page formula, which was working for us. So issue 11, trying to go to 16 pages, one, it cost more, so it just bit into the coffers extra hard. And really it was because of issue 11 that our finances at this point plummeted. But it also was, I think, less of the magazine. One of those lessons in life where more is less. So issue 11, by this stage, not only was it a mistake in terms of the magazine itself, but I believe that it was a financial mistake as well.
What did you form? I put an ad in the paper. Bass player wants to play with other dumb players, and the first person that come to my door was a bass player, and I said, mate, I'm the bass player. And he goes, yeah, but I'm a dumb muso. And I said, yeah, but 2 bass players. And he goes, oh, we can do a Cure thing. I said, no. He said, this won't work out. So we had a jam, and I don't know any Cure songs.
No.
I didn't know many songs at all. The earwigs were basically NRGFUN. That's basically the bottom. We even tried to play in Dolby. I tried to organise a thing with the Dolby Council to go out and play on the back of a truck going up and down the main street.
Yeah.
And it was only about that far off completion. Oh. And they pulled the pin on us. It was going to be Bam Bams and the Earwigs play Dolby.
Yeah.
But a lot of things. We were just forever trying to think of some scam, hence in one of these there's a lot of, a picture of a lot of bottoms.
Bums, scratch and sniff, originally.
So bums, scratch and sniff. And one of those cheeky guys at the top is me as well. The whole idea was to get into Bums magazine for free. We figured, right, let's take a photograph of each of our bottoms, get a photo of each of our faces, and the competition was to match the face to the bottom. We had an entry box at all our gigs, and we properly lost the entry box, and no one won the prize, and I can't remember what the prize was anyway.
It was a year's free entry to Earwigs gigs.
Oh, was it?
Yes. Yeah, I noticed.
Very generous, very
generous. It was about 3
generous.
months later that you broke up.
Yeah,
So-
but I'd love to see this as where are these bums now?
Get along with you, yeah. Get along with you. I just don't know how to get along with you. There's a whole lot of tension going around. You wanna be lost, don't wanna be found.
Us bands that were like Aileen Boris that were probably not even as popular as some of the other bands that were getting around at the time, because we were a punk band. We were only one of the handful that were around back in in '89. We didn't get any exposure except for our name in the gig guide, maybe occasionally.
Blur anyway, but we sort of like saw the opportunity of putting gigs on, and so the Gulf War was about to happen. We did an anger and motion gig with Alien Virus, basically 2 days before they invaded went and took over Kuwait and pushed the Iraqis out and stuff like that. And so it was the end of the World War II, World War III warm-up gig.
I've still got that handful of songs on there.
And
World War III warm-up, and we didn't have a PA or anything.
So yeah, we had a really dodgy PA from Rollo then. He didn't have the proper PA. Really kind of gig that we did and stuff. But it worked, and then maybe about a month or two later, we just started up regular. Like we did it every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon.
A bit like I was saying, I think Aileen Boris played like nearly every second Friday. It was Blowhard, Insane Hombres.
Bad Ronald, probably, wasn't it?
Probably, Bad Ronald, Insane Hombres.
Anger and Motion.
Anger and Motion, and who else did we play with all the time? There's a few I've probably been around. We played some dodgy gigs as well for people.
Because napalm sticks to kids. Don't you fuck with the USA, cause napalm sticks to kids. 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 Napalm sticks to kids.
I've always been big on arts coverage, and the good thing about BUMS is from issue 1 you had the stage page that I was only just reminded about looking through the back issues.
Well, if we think that local musicians are starved for press, the local stage community, the local theatre community are in an even worse situation.
Okay, I looked after the stage page, and that was basically reviews and information. So just went to a show a week, I think, something like that. Did some reviews, went to the opening night parties, and tried to give information on auditions, what's on. Yeah, it was just one page, really simple. And every now and then I did a profile interview, I remember. But it was mainly reviews. I used to make around LeBois a lot, so that was my centre, my focus. And I did see in one of my crits up in the green room and the corkboard things. There's always like the reviews are cut out and put on, and mine was up there. And I thought,
What did it feel like?
Embraced. Oh, I didn't have any problem the other way. No, I'm totally embraced. It didn't take long at all before I was able to make calls and say, it's Amanda from BUMS. Then I was getting tickets and everything. But once it was established and people knew that there was stage page existed, I was very pro independent local theatre and groups starting up. The PR guy, the arts theatre actually, he got it straight away when I was explaining what we're up to, what we're trying to do. I remember I could see his facial expression. He was right into it, straight up, really enthusiastic, really optimistic, and into it. He gave me heaps of info and stuff to put in the first one, and was really happy, because the question is, can we put BUMS here?
Completely. I mean, having worked in the industry now, I met the actors who actually worked in LeBois at the time, like Eugene Gilfeder and people like that, and they have very fond memories of BUMS. I was actually speaking to him about 2 weeks ago because he's working with QTC, and he was saying that he used to love actually picking up a BUMS magazine, which is free, and reading his name and knowing that other people he knew were also reading it as well.
Because of issue 11 and a few other things, I mean, we were always broke. We were never not broke. My struggle every fortnight was to find money to print this damn thing. And, you know, one fortnight you'd get an advertiser, next fortnight you'd lose an ad. If the industry had a bad week, well, you may not get as many ads as you hoped for. So how can you put it? Yeah, we were dead broke and we were about to fold. I think I had written an article in issue 11 or 12 more or less saying that very thing, that, you know, hey, look, unless something happens, you know, we just couldn't see it happening that much longer. We had regular advertisers, but just not enough of them. But that was really the market that was in Brisbane. And I think the response from the venues was amazing in that I'm sure they didn't all get together and, you know, have some sort of, you know, secret venue meeting or anything, but more or less about within an issue or two of me writing an article about, you know, the fact we may not be around that much longer, it was like this thing happened. All of the venues started doubling their ad sizes. But we also had bands like Fear of Falling sending us money, just donations. I think they were so grateful to actually have, you know, a magazine that was, you know, writing stuff about their music. It sort of let you know that people did appreciate BUMS, that the venues did see value in it, and that the bands saw enough value in it to give up band money. Because believe me, there's not a lot of money out there for them either.
For us, it was certainly a conscious thing, but we certainly didn't discuss it with any other venue. We just said, oh no, you can't let this happen. This magazine is too important for our advertising, so, well, we'll just double our ad space. And I think too, I might have even talked to Cliff and Daniel about the situation and said, you know, how close to the bone are they, and is that really true? And certainly we just went straight back and said, okay, you know, it's not going to do us any harm to do this.
There was no one else doing it, you know, and I thought, well, you can't, you know, it's got to keep going at least, you know, for another year, you know, so I was always in support of most things independent. So, and BUMS being like, there was just no, apart from time off, it just seemed like a good idea, you know, that it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Mate, thank you very much. But we were starting to, you know, write articles on people like Blowhard, who the most, you know, anyone who's ever had anything to do with Blowhard and Rollo, Fred Band, know that they're one of the most fantastic bunch of blokes.
So Rollo had quite a strong impact with the music scene, that early 90s and late 80s.
Late last night, I heard a scream. Opened my eyes, woke up in a dream. I don't know which way to turn. In my mind, I can feel a burn. Gotta get out, gotta get away. Won't someone come and save me tonight? Hey taxi, take me to sanity. Take me where I can be Heard a siren skim past my door. A blue light distortion on my wall. Somewhere some child took her life. Rough costume with a sharp knife. She had to get out, she had to get away. No taxi's gonna save her tonight. Hey taxi, take me to sanity. Take me where I can be free. Gotta get away. I see. I gotta get out, I gotta get away. Won't someone come and save me tonight?
Would be. Yeah. I couldn't tell you an exact.
No.
Probably get an exact. The first, like you said, the BC Club gig that we did with Strontium Dog.
Yeah.
That was our first
That was
show.
our first show. Chopper and Brad were in Ide Fix together.
Yes.
And I'd been a friend of Brad's at college. And then just through various machinations, we ended up jamming. And that was about it.
Yeah.
We just got a couple of shows and just went from there. And we did a 10-year rotation on the designated driver, so he had the first 10 years.
In the weeks coming up, you can see Chopper Division, Anonymous Bosch, that's who we played with, and Strontium Dog. I love Strontium Dog.
Yeah.
Still got their single, that Strawberry Ice Cream Man, was it?
Yeah, that wasn't your market, it wasn't who you were after, that something like BUMS was. Even though we never consciously thought of markets or those sorts of things were, but you know, it just didn't enter your head that you'd go along that career mail sort of thing.
No.
And probably for so some of the people you talk to when you start talking about, okay, marketing plans and think about what you're going to do, that's not Chopper Division. We were never very good at that sort of thing. Or you know,
we had a business plan.
We did once, didn't we? That's right. We had a big piece of paper.
That's it. I think we used it to roll a joint. Chopper just played afterwards at BUMS, but the Electrics was at a different venue, and we came. I'm sure that was just talking about management. That was the one where Tony Blades from Mad Men came up, and he was our first manager. He said, "I'll manage you guys." From that BUMS bar experience when he was there.
Yeah.
And he was our first manager. That was pretty early on though.
Yeah. What that lasted
something. I think that whole era was the guitar bands. I think everybody was just, coming out of the Sub Pop stuff. It was just hitting us hard, and we just went to the Pixies the other night, 20 years of Doolittle. It was just, it was really, we can do that, we want to do that. And there's a fair bit of that, but geez, we had a varied influence though. We listened to heaps of different stuff as we have over the years, but you're right into Rat Cat. Yeah, the old thing.
Pretty much editing ourselves.
Tapes together.
Yeah.
We even played the music. Geez.
We tried to outsource
the music. And the old thing where you put your old tapes together, you'd stuff the sleeve, you'd put everything on it. You can remember days sitting around the kitchen table, putting together Whalebone, the first tape.
Yeah, and the Chill Out single, remember?
Yeah,
we sat around, we all had little compasses each to write messages on the inside.
On the vinyl itself.
Scratch messages.
Choppers, I thought Choppers were hilarious. Love the music, but they started all that cricket comp thing too, which was a really fantastic idea, which I only again found out the other day that it's still going, with maybe some of them aren't necessarily in bands, so it's sort of evolved, and it's now called the Brisbane Band Cricket Association, so it's gotten really serious. But yeah, again, I loved those guys, and they were probably one of the first Brisbane bands, certainly that played at our venue, that had a style. So it looked like they belonged together. And that's probably my biggest memory of those guys.
I remember Chopper Division through cricket, actually.
They started it.
Yeah. I played in the inaugural game with what became the Spinners, and I think it was against Chopper Division and their illustrious friends.
Chopper Division, well, it's had, I saw them play several times and quite enjoyed them, but when I think of Chopper Division now, I think of the cricket competition. And that was a really good thing.
Isn't it?
I don't know if it was starting just after all this BUMS sort of stuff, but they were pretty competitive. They had their own team, and it was, I don't know, they were
remember how we got the keys or got the, it was kind of somebody had to die before you got in there sort of thing, but amazing. I seem to recall definitely Batswing Saloon, I think, had a practice room there. The Earwigs had a practice room there for a while. I think Phil Monsoor and his band, the Cutters, they had a band in there, a room. Maybe Screenfeeder had a do, and a bizarre, drunken old caretaker guy who you'd sort of bump into with a big red nose and sort of half cut at 7 o'clock or whatever, and you'd be walking through the valley and you're just going up into that space and the big bubbles on the wall, the old sort of, kind of a space age sort of outfitting of the whole building was bizarre, and there was no Ricks or there was no Valley Mall at that stage. It was all pretty wild and just, kind of a pretty pioneer place at that stage. It was the music.
And so that was amazing, like being there. And it was the first place that we rehearsed where you could actually leave your gear set up. And I mean, it's pretty amazing. We never had anything ripped off, but we were there for a couple of years.
People were sleeping in the hallways.
Yeah, people were sleeping. Fits everywhere, syringes everywhere, and in the toilets. It wasn't a nice place. We'd go and knock on his door and say, "Oh, we've got our key again, sorry," and he'd come and let us in.
We used to walk up and down the escalators that were no longer in action.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a little music hub in itself. It was Brasilia and all the other bands were just practicing in their own rooms.
Broken Toys was there too, right?
Broken Toys were recording
studios. Went there for a while. But yeah, those rooms were great. We knocked out a wall on the inside of our house to make it look bigger. They didn't care what happened to it. It was like Dr. Who said or something.
Yeah.
We were on the green level. So I'd rehearsed right near us. They'd knock on the door and Nico would be there saying, "Come on, Steve."
The old Target building, and we're on the top floor up in the Pussycats are in one corner and we're in the other corner with Batswing Saloon and the Cutters, if you can remember.
So we shared the room with them, and that was great. I mean, I don't know, you probably would have been in the building. As you know, we had this. It was just a great space. That was for us. That place sort of made the band happen because we couldn't sort of play in our parents' garages anymore. We were just too loud and played too long and all that sort of stuff. So being able to be in that huge space where it was comfy and you just felt you could get something to eat at night, as Jack said, and we'd literally be there Sunday nights, all Sunday night virtually, playing, and that's what sort of made it happen.
Because it was enough room to, I remember playing indoor cricket too, like it was that big between the escalators and where you could play indoor cricket. It was massive, and it was, it's such an honour to be in such a wacky space. Mind you, a lot of pigeons shit on your amp, between weeks, but that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate how important having that space was at the time, because like we said, it just gave you, there was a sense of community. You had this sort of space that was essentially ours. I mean, it was pretty much the bands, and it was kind of our sanctuary. And if you compare it to where we went when it all closed down in that sort of crazy crash when the security came in and stuff got lost and all of that right at the end, right?
Yes.
We went, well, where are we going to go now? The next place we went to was rehearsal space, because rehearsal space is really important.
Yes. Yeah.
We went to a lock-up garage type.
Well, I don't know if it was a conscious thing that we all sat down and said, yeah, let's be really proactive within the scene, but it was just, I guess I'm someone who just wants to push and push and push, and Tony was the same, and he was booking the band and was kind of managing the band, so between the two of us, we were also very autonomous. We didn't really try too hard to establish ourselves as part of a scene as such, although, I did later on with the Bruce tapes and things like that, but I don't know, we just thought it's got to be all or nothing. We've got to really press on with it, or just why bother, That's always been our thing. I can't remember why I started the label Stone Groove, but I think, did we put out Clip on a Kid on it? I don't know. The only thing I did was to put a couple of compilation tapes together of Brisbane bands of the era, like of the 91, 92 kind of time, and put 10 or 12 bands on this tape and sell it at gigs, and it went really well. It's called Bruise, and we did Bruise 1, Bruise 2, and it was just all the sort of real grungy kind of bands. It was sort of your Bards and your Cruds and your Madmen and Chopper Division and all those kind of bands, and it was it sort of did really feel like a bit of a scene there for a while, because you know you got lots of people coming to gigs. That's another thing back then. The gigs were really well attended at the Treasury and the Funkyard and the Orient. Yeah, those kind of places. And it felt like a scene. And looking back on it now, I'm just going, oh my god, it really did feel like a scene. It's never, you know, we've always had this thing, the Screen Theatre and the Madman, that we play and then bands will support us like UMI in Sydney, and you never think, you can't say, oh, they're going to be like, you know, this huge band, but so many bands have supported us and they've just gone, maybe we've got some lucky hex on us, like you play under us, bang, you'll be playing over us 2 weeks later.
So my mistake was
I've got heaps of memories going back as far as coming down to Brisbane from Townsville and playing. We always used to go to Toowoomba as well. And I used to own a van, a little white E1600, and we used to just jump in the van, scream down from Townsville. This was in the days before many speed cameras, and you could just travel at 140 if you wanted to. It's great. And then, you know, we do a Brisbane show, we do a Toowoomba show, and we drive back, and everyone will be back on Monday morning and stuff. And we get back, and me and Tony were sharing a house, and we sit there and gluing up single covers and folding them up and numbering them and stuff like that. And
well, I mean, when we used to, some of the earliest gigs we did at the Orient was with the Madman, which is, you know, I think they just moved down from Townsville, and they were really quite Husker-Do-ish and from memory. And yeah, I just remember Tim was just lovely the first time that I met him, and I don't know, he's got an amazing presence on stage, and then you meet him and he's just really mellow.
Always been a bit underrated.
Yeah,
as a songwriter.
Yeah.
He's written a lot of songs and a lot of good stuff too. Just, you know, like many people, just doesn't get that recognition that perhaps they deserve.
Screen Theatre?
Madmen we first had on when I came down from Townsville for a couple of weeks for a tour. Yep. They sent us some stuff, we really liked them. We said, yeah, we'll definitely give you a gig. They ended up staying a little bit longer. And if I go back in my memory, I think there was floods up there or something and they couldn't get back because they were driving. So we gave them a couple more gigs because we thought, here's these poor guys that are sleeping on friends' floors, no food, no money. So we've just got to give them a couple more gigs. Again, they amazed us by having t-shirts. We were really amazed, hey, here's this band and they've actually got t-shirts. Everything that Tim does is just perfect. I love his music, love his solo stuff, all the bands he's been in. There's something about the way that he writes that is just really, in whatever guise he's in, the songs are just absolutely crafted and perfect and fantastic. There's no one else around. And now we're more afraid. Now they know how. The dead got the power. They've worked it out. And they built the tower. We're more brave. We're more brave. We're more brave. We're more brave.
So issue 17 will always be special for me because it was the issue of the BUMS Awards, and we held these little awards. We got all of our voters to, all of our readers to vote. We would have drop points for ballots at all the local clubs, pubs, music stores. You could put, you could put your stuff in and your votes in. And a week before the BUMS Awards, we tallied them all up with just enough time to go out and print certificates. Thank you, Danny Locke. We handed out, certificates and shit to bands, and we had favourite, best male vocalist, best female vocalist, most popular rock band, most popular metal band, best keyboardist, bass player. The BUMS Awards were huge because it was like finally this piece of recognition for the people who really gave Brisbane enjoyment every weekend by jumping on the stage and making complete idiots of themselves, which is what we all excelled in, drunken or otherwise. So, BUMS Awards were held at Metropolis nightclub. Ian and Johnny Griffin more or less donated the nightclub to us. They also donated the club to us on many of the BUMS benefits nights. They organised the bar, the door, everything. BUMS, really, what Ian and Johnny did for us was just amazing, but then they were like that.
Even though it might have seemed a bit cute or whatever at the time, like they held the BUMS Awards and all that sort of stuff, like that was, that was great, and you can't, I think you'd be lying if you didn't say there was a bit of a buzz about that, and, kind of a small sort of thing, but, it was people got into it, people supported it, and it was good.
I good, you was.
Oh yes, I remember them. Because there was three of us reading out the thing, and we didn't practice or anything. We loved it. I thought we did all right. Oh,
yeah,
man.
that was the thing.
I can only recall that Minnesota Triplets did make the finals,
right,
but we were in there as a heavy metal.
Yes,
and I didn't know what to think of that. And when Thrust won it, I went.
Thrust were a good heavy metal.
They were great, but they were heavy metal. We were Bob Mold, for Christ's sake. That's power pop. And why was there not a category for most costume changes?
Well, I think it was more kind of punter based, because you had the little voting cards, and you could vote for your favourites. Didn't matter who they were. You didn't have to pick from a list or anything.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, there was people who were involved in the scene, whether they be in bands or just punters, just voting for their friends and favourite artists in the scene, and so it was a bit more kind of. It wasn't so based on market kind of stuff like the other rock awards were.
Best guitarist, Jack Lovejoy. Second, Ash Geary, bagged off the whiskey. And so Ash Geary's still going. I recorded him just last week with the JJ Speedball band. So a lot of these people are still rocking today. And like I said, this was our leg up. A launching pad. A lot of people are still in the biz.
Dig Lumix came from, let's see, Matthew Tompkins, who's the hair like Slash, and the guitar like Slash,
Jeans like Slash,
and jeans like Slash too. So basically Slash was, So Matt was wandering around, I think, after the Dinky Flyers, which sort of ran up to 87, 88, something like that, and they made a big impact locally on that. Matt must have said, you want to form a band, Richie, so then you did the standard thing, we sort of disappeared for 3 months or something with a bunch of tapes and then so the Lumix got together with me, Matt Tompkins, Nick Lee, who was in initial bass player was Colin Tate, who was in the Subsonic Barfly, he was our first bass player. And we also had another bass player later, Chris Anderson, the bass playing legend. Sadly, Chris has passed. And Adam Cole was our drummer. But I used to look at him. He was still the most professional musician I ever played with. And I thought this bloke's going places. So that was basically most of it. I don't think I've forgotten too many. And I remember we'd all had the practice tapes for so long. We all plugged in and thought, we can just go. So we went bang and realised we were all in different keys. But within about half an hour we were going, and I remember Jeremy from Bombastics and Dinky Flyers, Jeremy Brown, Jed, now in Sydney, he wandered in and gave us a nod, and I thought, oh good. And that was probably the moment I sort of felt myself locked in.
we had no graphic artist. The look of the magazine was deteriorating. We still got it out though, you know, we still got it out. We, you know, with use of a typewriter, which was a borrowed typewriter from my ex-girlfriend, but it was also our New Year's Eve issue. So we also managed to go out and get lots of New Year's Eve pics of, you know, more or less the whole Brisbane scene back then. And, you know, how can you put it, even with the cut and paste artwork, even though, you know, there were no writers around, there weren't as many things on because it was the holidays, and there, you know, how can you put it, Brisbane tended to quieten down a fair bit, so there's not as much advertising, it's harder to publish. I thought it was more or less the end of BUMS by that point, but Dean had been away in Sydney, and when she got back, and I think it was people were starting to come back from holidays, I was working full time. She knew that I was having a lot of troubles, you know, fitting everything into my life, and that I was, you know, sort of, I had to leave as well. And really, at that point, she could have easily just go, oh, you know, stuff it, you know, it's just not worth it. But she took the bull by the horns, God bless her. And she got all the ads in, and she pulled the writers together, and literally Adine formed, she says it was a collective effort, but really it was a collective effort with her at the front. For the next 3 years, Adine published that magazine. And I think maybe, you know, there was a lot of hard yards done in the first year, getting it up off the ground, making it a regular part of Brisbane life, to the point where it could become the magazine that Adine helped it become, that people like Helly Puhaka turned it into. Helly's artwork was incredible. What those guys did with BUMS after that first year, I think really that was that's the magazine that we celebrate. That's the magazine that had the long-term impact on Brisbane music. And, you know, I sort of think all of the things, the benefits that we've seen it have in the first 20 issues, that was, you know, even more so for the next 2 to 3 years of Brisbane music industry.
Because you had the women doing it. And Adine very definitely, like she really took the reins and ran with it, but in a really good way. Totally different perspective. I mean, girls just think of things differently.
Do you think?
It's because we rock.
I think it wasn't a question, was it?
Yeah, it's just.
I think you had the passion. I think you had a lot of passion for it. Maybe not a lot of common sense.
Yeah, that'd be on the money, Teresa, on the money. I know.
What are they going to put on the cover this time?
I used to be like that, going to her house to pick up the artwork and be like, oh, what's she going to get?
BUMS was probably a cog in the machine. It helped people think of Brisbane as a scene with bands, and you know, that helped put it in a frame. I think it was. I think the existence of BUMS reflected the need for it, b the fact that there was enough bands out there doing interesting things to inspire people like you to do it, and yeah, it was just a very nice little. Yeah, it was a good document, and it was a nice indicator of this scene that. You know, you could feel if you listened closely, you could feel the scene bubbling up. And
yeah, definitely. Let you know where gigs were, and you could. I mean, it's the first time we probably ever did interviews with anyone.
And Time Off was like the establishment, and BUMS was like the anti-establishment, kind of more like the underground of the underground.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely, and the name was a big part of that. But because it actually did state it, there was an underground music scene and it needed a voice. And it triumphed, yeah, it did. In that short amount of time, but so much was going on at that time. It was such an exciting time.
I think particularly because it was so Brisbane focused, I think that even though Time Off existed, and there may have been a couple of other, I don't know if Rave probably wasn't around then, but certainly Time Out. I mean, it did sort of cover some Brisbane music, but a lot of the bands and stuff they sort of, printed about were, international, interstate, and all that sort of thing. So I think it was, that was what was so original about it, was just about Brisbane bands mainly.
Yeah.
I think everyone in the bands probably, well, hopefully felt that it was their magazine, you know, that it could be easily part of it, as opposed to something that, like Time Off, that you'd have to lobby for months before you'd even get a conversation with the editor.
Yeah.
They stopped writing about what happened, but then they gave you a description of what it was about.
Yes.
So instead of being like this, then this, then this, then this, it gave you a sense of what it was like to be there, and that was where the change in writing came.
Yeah.
When it started being more like that.
Yeah.
And gave you a sense of the band, and a sense of the feeling, and a sense of what the music was like. So then you knew you could understand them, as far as a review went, whether you'd want to go see them yourself.
Definitely, I think it did start to make the bands see that, you know, this local industry could be professional, because I think they had to then be able to produce a professional photo, or pose for a photo perhaps for somebody to put in that issue. They had to think about what they were being interviewed on. They potentially might have had to provide a good bio. So yeah, it definitely did make a difference. And it probably also made a difference to the audiences as well, because I think they started to take local bands a little bit more seriously.
Suddenly BUMS comes on the scene. It's a breath of fresh air. It was back to local music. I mean, it's great to know that such and such is touring Sydney or Melbourne. What's happening this weekend in my city? And here it was, and it was there, and it was fleshed out so that it was a really easy read.
I remember sitting at work one day looking at the top 10, because, you know, in those days working in a record label, you were judged by your chart success to a certain extent. You know, that was very much when the charts came out, everyone sat together and had a go. I remember sitting there one day in the top 10, I think had Powderfinger, Regurgitator and Custard, 3 Brisbane bands in the top 10 of the ARIA charts. And it was like, you know, something significant happened, and, you know, the contribution that BUMS made to that is not to be discounted. You know, I'm sure you wrote about all of those bands, or at least the precursors to those bands. You know.
Picture of what was happening in 1990, and more importantly, you know, how that set the groundwork for what was going to happen in the future, and how it reflected about what had already happened in Brisbane. So it's a priceless historical document. BUMS is huge. It's not just a curio. It's not just an interesting little sort of diversion. It's a very important primary source document, or series of documents, about a very important time in Brisbane's cultural development. And I mean cultural development, not pop culture or subculture, cultural development. That a lot of people think they know about, and has been written about, but has not been written about in nearly enough detail, or I think with enough empathy or understanding of what it was actually like to be there, which after all is what good writing is all about. And to read BUMS, you get a much better idea of what it was like to be there, whether it was scraping yourself off the sticky carpet of the Atchley, or trying to avoid condensation running down those wonderful glass pillars of the Roxy.
Just, you know, I remember the first moment I had a band practice, my son band, my first ever take a big band practice, the feeling of the electricity, just, you know, it was something that, you know, really overtook me and absorbed me.
And I think if he wanted to... No,
Really?
the picture. Well, in some ways Sean was a bit of a hero, because he sort of, well, he basically became a businessman, whereas I was at home tuning the guitar, you know.
We felt a need just to keep adding local stories. The record companies were keen to sign local bands if they could, and you had your Regurgitators, Powderfinger and Custards came out of that. You mentioned more guys got involved in management here, but I mean, this kind of build I'm sure was happening, you know, There's probably guys in the 60s plotting what they wanted to do and then just kind of built and built and built. But we definitely did local music, but I think when BUMS came along, the exciting thing about that was it was just all local music.
70-75 advertising, the 20-25%, 30-25% editorial. And the editorial is going to be, whether you like it or not, dictated by your advertising base. Also at that stage, the venues that were supporting local bands and putting local bands on couldn't afford to take out full pages. They'll flat out supporting up 10x2, the old cigarette size pad.
Overwhelming anxiety, focus down, stationary, achieving notoriety, senseless, hard and scary.